Today on Your Voice, Your Vote, the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history is finally over. At the center of the fight, Oregon's two sitting senators.
Was it worth it? Why or why not?
In our one-on-one interviews with both senators, the next steps when it comes to reducing your health care costs.
We're going to stay at it until we get them some help.
A big vote in the U.S. House this week on the Epstein files.
I'm hoping that after the House acts, there will be another opportunity to create momentum in the Senate.
We'll hear from the senators on that. And this is the last show for someone very important to its production every week, and you've never seen her until today. Your Voice, Your Vote starts right now.
From K2 News, this is Your Voice, Your Vote with Steve Dunn.
Hi, everybody. Great to have you with us. It's Sunday, November 16th. And this morning, two key voices in Oregon politics. They were center stage in the longest federal government shutdown that ended on Wednesday. Senate Republicans needed an additional 8 yes votes on a funding bill to reopen the government. They eventually got them from 7 Democrats and an independent, but the Democrats weren't from Oregon. Senators Wyden and Jeff Merkley continuously voted no. They wanted Republicans to agree to an extension on health care subsidies for millions of Americans. What they got was a promise from the Senate Majority Leader that a vote will be held in December on whether to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies. There was no promise from the House. President Trump with this message on the shutdown.
You should not forget this when we come up to midterms and other things. Don't forget what they've done to our country. I also want to call for a termination to the filibuster so that this can never happen again.
Today, we ask Oregon's two senators about the 43-day shutdown, bringing down health care costs, and the Epstein files. We begin with Oregon Senior Senator Wyden, who spoke to my colleague Angelica Thornton on Thursday.
Oregon Senator Wyden, thanks for coming on the program. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so we're recording this interview on a Thursday. The country just experienced the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Senate Republicans, with the help of 8 Democrats, passed a bill to reopen the government this past week. You voted no on the deal. Senator, why did you oppose it?
We have Oregonians who have seen 500% increases in their premiums. And what I did is, I said at the beginning, I'm going to draw a red line. And my red line is going to be, I'm not going to support any legislation that doesn't help those folks. Because they're Oregonians, and at 500% increases, it's hard to make rent, it's hard to pay for groceries, it's hard to buy shoes for kids. It's just way, way too much. And I'm the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee. We're going to tackle it again in about 10 days, and my position is going to be the same thing. We're going to stay at it until we get them some help.
All right, we're going to talk more about those premiums and affordability in a second, but as a party, did Democrats take a step forward or backwards with the outcome of this shutdown, do you think?
I felt we did, particularly for the reason I just mentioned, what we had to do. You know, there's no question after Trump got a package through earlier that gave all the help to billionaires, it wasn't right to say to working families, you're just going to get clobbered. I mean, right now, those folks with those premium hikes, they're going to feel like they got hit by a wrecking ball.
Some Democrats in the Senate say that they voted to reopen the government because they didn't see a path forward on health care, and people in this country are going without their benefits and their pay. What would you say to the Democrats who voted to reopen the government without getting an extension of federal health care subsidies?
Well,
what do you say to them?
I came to the conclusion early on that you couldn't trust Donald Trump just say, I'll take care of it. But the reality is there are ways to act in a bipartisan way. You look at the pharmacy benefit manager legislation that I wrote with the Republicans. This is going to stop folks from getting mugged at the pharmacy counter. So it's not as if it's impossible. That's what I'm determined to do when we start up the debate again, and we will have it in about 10 days.
Right. So Senator Republican leadership has promised to allow a vote in December on a Democratic bill tied to the Affordable Care Act, right? So with health care subsidies at the center of this fight, do you believe there's a workable compromise here? And if so, what would that bipartisan deal look like?
Well, what Republicans are saying now is they want to go after the big insurance companies. Well, put me down as being pretty skeptical about that because I've never seen them take big insurance companies on before. But I'll be in if they're serious about it. I wrote the tough law that protected older people, you know, back in the Medigap days, these policies that were sold to supplement your Medicare. Seniors would buy 10, 15 policies. In fact, they do it not far from this station. It's like getting mugged by an insurance broker. I ended that scandal.
Do you think the House will vote on this?
My sense is that they're going to do their best to come up with something that doesn't really tackle the problem. They're going to have something that sounds good. You heard the speaker say, I'm interested in health insurance. He never was for anything real. So we're going to stay at it. If they're serious, for example, about taking on big insurance, I'm ready to go.
Where does your party go from here on this issue?
Where we go is we're going to talk about specific ways to help those people who have 500% increases in their premiums. I mentioned the pharmacy benefit manager issue. You look at some of the price gouging that goes on by the insurance companies when they take something small wound on the leg and blow it up into something big so they can milk taxpayers. We'll have specifics.
I think a lot of Americans are watching this unfold, and they're of course relieved that the government is open right now, but they may be rolling their eyes because it's like, are we going to be in the same place at the end of January? What do you say to them? People are frustrated by this cycle.
There's no question that it's better to have a bipartisan effort, and I said that early on. I said it week after week after week. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit by as the guy on the finance committee that deals with taxes and let the billionaires walk away with vast sums of money, and people who are getting hit by these premiums just get clobbered.
Let's talk about affordability then. Americans are struggling. Housing costs in Oregon are just crazy right now. What are you doing in Congress to make things easier for Oregonians?
First of all, there are a variety of approaches. I've supported vouchers. Those are the kind of help that will help people get through the winter. But I've got the LIHTC bill, the low-income housing tax credits. That's something that's going to be useful. But a new bill that's bipartisan again called MITAC, middle-income housing tax credits. So the reality is the state and local folks have got to step up, but so does the federal government. Got to be there for being a partner.
Let's change topics now. We're talking a lot about this over the past week. We've heard federal agencies may be eyeing Newport's municipal airport for an ICE detention center there. Katu News has reached out to DHS several times for confirmation. We have not heard back at this point. What can you tell us about the possibility of an ICE facility on the Oregon coast?
This is not going to happen on my watch. I'm going to be out there every single day pushing the point that this is a wonderful, community. They're very proud. They don't need another detention facility, particularly one that could be close to kids walking by it on the way to an aquarium. This is outrageous. I'm going to have a town hall meeting, an open to all town meeting. I've had 1,100 of them in my time representing Oregon in about 7-8 days, and we're going to listen to folks. But I'm going to pull out all the stops to block it. We already had one defense contractor, it's in the news today, saying they don't want anything to do with it. And the reason the Trump people are interested in it is they think they can roll a small community. It's far from some of the big TV stations like yours and others. It's not going to happen on my watch.
What are your specific concerns with a facility like this opening in Newport?
Well, first of all, this is a horrible setting. I mean, this is a community that's been involved in fishing and tourism and the like. It's just not suited for this. It's a very proud community, and I think they're literally pursuing it because they think they can roll a small town. And the Oregon delegation is going to say no, and it's my job as the senior member to stop it.
Flipping it on the other side with people who might be thinking, okay, but this could bring jobs to Oregon. What do you say to them?
Well, the opposition in the community is enormous. They already had a town hall meeting. They're not going to buy that idea that, they could have a few jobs and really upset the whole culture of what's made the community so special.
What is the #1 concern from your constituents right now?
The biggest concern is the one where the second word is bill. It might be medical bill. It might be electric bill. It might be car bill, it might be school bill. Those are the things people are talking about, and they were promised in 2024 that there was going to be a focus on affordability. And what did Trump do? He gave the brakes to the billionaires and gave them peanuts.
Senator Wyden, thanks for coming on the program.
Let's do it again.
Your time.
Later in this program, Senator Wyden on the Jeffrey Epstein files. And up next, Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley.
From K2 News, this is Your Voice, Your Vote with Steve Dunn.
And welcome back to the program on this Sunday morning. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley joins us now. Always good to see you.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Nice to have you in town. Shutdown is over, of course.
It is indeed.
Given its impact on food stamp recipients, federal workers, and air travelers, was it worth it? Why or why not?
Well, I'll tell you, it really mattered because we have a situation where 20 million people are losing the access to affordable health care. And a huge number of those folks, are in Oregon. And so people are going to look at the Affordable Care Act exchange and they're going, wow, my payment was $150 a month and now it's going to be $1,000 a month. Well, that means I can't pay rent or I can't pay my mortgage or I can't feed my kids. And when you don't have health care, lots of other things start to go bad. You don't go to the doctor when you get sick. You might end up with an emergency that's very expensive. You won't be able to pay that without insurance. Now there's less revenue to our clinics and hospitals, which then affects all of us.
You mentioned the Affordable Care Act. Senate Republican leadership has promised to vote on this in December. How do you think your Republican colleagues will vote on it?
Well, the vote is an artifice. It is a vote on a standalone bill, which means it's not attached to something that has to get to the president's desk. What we were asking for was a one-year extension of the enhanced tax credits to keep insurance affordable. And that was a fair deal. We weren't asking fix all of the Medicaid issues that are happening in 2027. So just narrow it down to this. We said, hey, colleagues, you're saying you want to prepare a new health care plan, but you don't have it yet. This will give you a year to put your plan together and present it to the public and iron the details out while not leaving 20 million people in the lurch. And they basically said, no, thank you. And that's going to be very damaging to a lot of people.
If it does pass the Senate, do you think it passed the House as well? What do you think?
Well, if this special vote passed the Senate, it's very unlikely it would pass the House. And it was being presented as an opportunity to express your voice. Well, expressing your voice is fine, but we do that all the time. What we're looking for is the ability to actually save health care for Americans.
If it goes nowhere, what are your next steps when it comes to reducing the cost of health care? What do you do?
Well, the Republicans have said, look, once we are back open, we will negotiate. So now's the test. They keep saying, well, we're going to come up with some new ideas. Well, we heard that through 4 years of the first Trump administration. They had 4 years out of office in which to plan for a new health care plan. Essentially, the plan that's in place that we're talking about here is simply a website where you can compare policies and get a tax credit to help you buy those policies. They're private policies. It was never a government takeover. That was a complete I guess, deception, I'll say. So normally Republicans like tax credits. And in fact, they passed in their big, beautiful bill, as they called it, I called it the big, ugly betrayal, massive, in fact, $30 trillion of increased national debt to give tax breaks to billionaires. But now we're talking about a tax credit to help ordinary families buy insurance, and they're saying, no deal. We don't want to help those families.
Is there a workable compromise here, and what would that look like?
Well, the workable compromise was, while you're developing your plan and presenting it, getting it through committee, making sure it will work, you bring in the experts, leave those enhanced tax credits in place. Maybe that will be the compromise now, but President Trump came out and said, hell no to providing tax credits to ordinary families, so we'll see.
The Senate needed 60 votes to pass the funding bill. Took 43 days to get the necessary votes. Any lessons learned from this 43-day experience at all?
Well, the biggest lesson is we're at a moment of authoritarian control. Unlike we have seen in the history of our country, our founders were terrified of a president trying to become a king. But we have seen during the last 2 decades that democracies have failed around the world, not because men with guns storm the Capitol, but because aggressive authoritarian presidents proceed to diminish or damage the separation of powers. And it's kind of a pretty simple list of things. You fire the referees like the inspector generals. You put loyalists instead of experts in charge of cabinet. You start to cancel programs even though you don't have the authority or the constitutional support to do so. And we've seen that time after time after time. You attack centers of powers like broadcasting networks, trying to use the mergers or broadcast licenses, or research grants over universities, or security ability access for law firms. You proceed to start trying to put the military in the street, weaponize the Department of Judiciary of Justice to go after your enemies list, and you start to rig the next election. All of those are happening right now. So I'm ringing the alarm bells to say we've never seen this, because we thought our institutions were stronger and could resist this impact. But it isn't. The authoritarian takeover of America is not down the street. It's not around the corner. It's here right now.
Do you think Democrats will be hurt at all by the shutdown in next year's midterms?
No. In fact, what we saw is the public broadly said, thank you for fighting for health care. Thank you for taking on this authoritarian president. In fact, the day after, a week ago, well, week and a half or so, elections, those elections told a story. Massive Democratic energy saying, stop this attack on our nutrition programs like SNAP, food stamps, stop the attack on health care, stop the authoritarian takeover. We saw in states like Virginia, where every county had a blue shift, at least 6% and as much as 16%. We've seen every by-election for replace a new member of Congress or something like that, in which we've done 10 to 15% better than we did in the election when Trump was reelected for his second term. I've seen my town halls here in Oregon, all 36 town halls, 5 times more people coming out in person than last year. Partly on economic issues, but mostly about concerns about the authoritarian takeover, crushing of our freedom and our liberties.
Katu News has been working on trying to find out if the federal government is indeed planning to build an ICE facility in Newport. Has your office been able to confirm that at all? What's happening there?
We've confirmed that the helicopter has been moved out of Newport. This helicopter, by the way, was going to be retired by the Coast Guard, and I led a partnership with South Carolina, which was also losing its helicopter, so I teamed up with Lindsey Graham, and this is maybe a decade ago now, and saved our helicopter. I called the head of the Coast Guard and said, hey, you get rid of this helicopter, people are going to die. We have lots of both commercial accidents and recreational accidents. And he didn't seem too concerned. He said, you know, people can live in that water for 15 minutes. I said, I'll tell you what, you come out here and we'll go out on a boat and you can jump in that cold Arctic water that comes down and we'll pull you out 15 minutes later, and if you're still alive, we'll have a conversation about that. He turned me down and we kept our helicopter. And now they're moving it, which is not great. We're here that they're advertising for security personnel. So, and the rumor is it's going to be a detention facility for ICE. There's been no conversation with Oregon's representatives or senators about this.
I was going to
no
say,
transparency.
Think there'd be some sort of communication.
Exactly.
With you guys, but that's not
this is the sort of thing you always cooperate in terms of information. You take input. This administration is, again, an authoritarian. In an authoritarian setting, you do not cooperate or seek input from anyone. You just do your thing until the courts stop you. And I think it's a terrible idea, and I hope we can stop it.
Senator Jeff Merkley, always great to see you. We appreciate your time. When you're in town, you can always come by. As we look ahead to this week, the U.S. House is expected to vote on a bill to release files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Enough House members have signed on to force a vote on a bill that would mandate the Department of Justice release all Epstein files, despite the opposition of Republican leadership.
The discharge petition is not only reckless, it is also a totally moot point. The Oversight Committee has been working, as you all know, around the clock, working on this.
The House Oversight Committee recently released 20,000 new pages of Epstein emails, part of a subpoena of the Epstein estate. The messages go back as far as 2011 and run through 2019, and they do mention President Trump multiple times. We asked Oregon's 2 senators about the Epstein files.
Speaker Johnson says the House is going to vote next week on whether to compel the Justice Department to release those files. What do you think of that? And you have been pushing separately, right, for the Treasury Secretary to release Epstein's financial files. You introduced a bill to get those records. What's holding that up? What's the current status of that?
First of all, so people understand the distinction, I believe you're never going to get to the bottom of this unless you have a follow the money strategy. That's how Al Capone got busted. It's got busted on taxes. This is an important step. I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg.
If the bill passes, it still goes to the Senate. And I asked Senator Merkley what he thinks will happen there.
I'm hoping that after the House acts, there will be another opportunity to create momentum in the Senate. But the Senate leadership has shown every indication of doing whatever Trump wants. And what Trump wants is for this to never come up in a vote again in the Senate on a House bill, because that would go to the Oval Office, right?
Well, he has to sign it, right?
And then he'd probably veto it, but vetoing it would look really bad. It'd come back and we'd have an attempt at a veto override. And, you know, who knows? Might even get that override.
To stay up to date on the upcoming House vote, watch K2 News or K2.com or K2's YouTube page. Well, as we say goodbye today, I want to mention that the producer of this program, Yvonne Bernicle, is leaving K2 to start a long overdue new chapter, as she puts it. We started Your Voice, Your Vote together in January of 2012. Since then, we've aired hundreds of interviews on critical issues facing the city, state, and the nation. Now, mind you, Yvonne has been at this station for 40 years, just doing some amazing work. She doesn't like to be on camera, so she asked me to thank you for watching throughout the years. She also wants to say thanks to all of our guests who appeared on this program. This show would not exist without your participation. Yvonne sends a special thanks to the talented directors who work on this show, especially her son, who is directing right now. Can we take a shot of the booth? There we go. That's her son on the right. That's Yvonne standing up, still working so hard, even though it's her last day. She also wants you to know that she is the greatest producer in the history of mankind. No, I'm kidding.
I never said that.
I made that one up, but it's true. I'm leaving next month myself, but I can assure you Your Voice, Your Vote will be in great hands when the new crew takes over. Enjoy the rest of your week.